These chairs are made to match a table I built for a client. I'll leave a card and a link below to the table I built if you want to see that. I do recommend watching it because this is going to be really similar and it'll fill in some of the gaps of some things I'm going to leave out of this video. Anyway, the client really likes the molded Eames chairs, so we ordered some of those and all I had to do was build new bases to match the table. The first thing I did was build a prototype to work out the proportions and make sure the design would be strong enough. I just pocket holed and screwed the prototype together, which is a lot weaker than the final product's going to be, but because the product held me bouncing on it, I knew that the final product is going to be plenty strong. The other nice thing about having a prototype is it made laying out my pieces really easy. The bases will be made from walnut and pinned with brass, just like the table base. So I skipped showing the milling process of the walnut in this video. If you're not familiar with that, you can go watch the table video and catch all of it. I wanted to get 3 legs from each piece, so after I laid them out, I roughed them out on the bandsaw. Of course, the bandsaw doesn't leave a flat cut, so next I took them to the jointer to establish a flat and square side before cutting the angle on each end at the miter saw. Then I used the tapering jig that I made for the table legs to cut the inside taper on the chair legs. I just added a piece of plywood as a spacer because these legs are going to be a lot narrower. I made the stretchers by first making a bunch of long stretchers with the angles on the ends and then cutting some down into shorter stretchers that have a 90-degree inside. Unlike the table, I won't be putting a taper on the underside of the chair stretchers because the pieces are so small and it wouldn't really be noticeable anyways. Next up is cutting the half laps that will join the stretchers to the legs. I do this on the table saw using a dado blade and my miter gauge, but the dado blade does leave a pretty rough surface, so I'm going to clean all these up with hand planes later. I'm going to have plans available for this chair and the table. They're currently on pre-sale, so you can get them separately or bundled at a 25% discount. But once they go up, that discount's going to go away. And there will be a link in the description where you can pre-order those or order them once they're published. I really racked my brain on the best way to join the short stretchers to the long ones, and I decided that dowels would be the best way to go. They'd provide plenty of strength and be pretty quick to install. To accurately locate all of the holes for the dowels, I took apart my Rockler doweling jig, I'll have a link below for that, and made a quick jig to hold it and my stretchers. Now I did this before gluing the legs on because the legs would have just gotten in the way. After the glue set, I drill all the holes for the brass pins. There are 24 joints needing a total of 48 holes, so you guessed it, I make another jig to speed up this process. Then I move to the brass rod. I'm smarter this time, and I scuffed the brass before cutting it by checking it up in my drill and then running sandpaper over it. Then I chop it into small pieces at the bandsaw and epoxy them into the chairs. Now, it would have been smarter to slide a small piece of plywood or something on this bandsaw to act as a zero clearance insert, but I just used some needle nose pliers to hold the offcuts as I cut them. The last part in assembling the wood is doweling the stretchers together. A conservative amount of glue and some persuasion, and these all came together very nicely. The small angled blocks that I hot glued on came in really handy for clamping. My claps would have wanted to just slip off because the legs are angled, but those pieces give my clamps two parallel surfaces to squeeze so they don't slide off. For the bases to go on the chairs properly, it's really important that the bases are square, and the glue up is the time to make this happen. If needed, I use some quick clamps and my square to bring everything into alignment. In my experience, it doesn't matter how careful you are, getting a chair to come out sitting level just requires some kind of black magic that I don't want to mess with. So I use a table saw trick. I raise my table saw blade only about a 32nd of an inch over the table, and then I slowly run the tall legs over it until the chair stops rocking. It's just too easy. Now the really fun part, putting on the finish. I used my old standard on these, General Finishes Armor Seal. I applied 3 coats, sanding with 400 grit sandpaper in between. Now the really tricky part, how to attach these bases to the chairs. I came up with 2 types of hardware, one for the front and one for the back, because the chairs are made to have the front elevated a little higher than the back. Now, I don't have any metal cutting saws, so I just clamped down my angle grinder and used it to speed things up. It's really hard to explain the idea behind these, so I'm just going to stop talking about how I made the hardware and just keep watching, and it should make plenty of sense. While I finish this up, I want to take a second and just say thank you for watching. If you enjoy this, please hit that like button and leave me a comment, and consider sharing this. Those things all really help me a lot. And if you really enjoy this content and want to support me, below and on the end screen you'll see a link to my Patreon page where you can support me there.